Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. Calls for Chicago's U.S. attorney to step down are growing.
I'm proud of our House. I'm proud of the processes that let us get big things done.
One-on-one with Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch on the state budget, the Bears Stadium plan, and more. And Columbia College's new president on the institution's future. First off tonight, both U.S. senators from Illinois are calling for a new U.S. attorney to replace Andrew Boutros. A joint statement from Senators Tammy Duckworth and outgoing Senator Dick Durbin reads, quote, Andrew Boutros's time as interim U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Illinois has been riddled with chaos, deep internal dysfunction, and alleged misconduct. He must resign, and there must be an open, transparent, and nonpartisan search to nominate the next U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. The two join a growing list of elected officials and candidates for office calling for Boutros's resignation in the wake of alleged prosecutorial misconduct that tanked the so-called Broadview 6 case. Last month, Boutros himself offered a public apology for his prosecutor's actions during grand jury proceedings last October. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney Boutros today is responding to claims by a defense attorney that he had some sort of, quote, personal contact with the grand jury in the Broadview 6 case. Boutros today says he did speak to grand jurors the day they returned an indictment in the case, but claimed he only did so to provide, quote, general comments about the need for grand jurors to be fair and impartial. The embattled U.S. attorney issued a, quote, rare special report including transcripts of a nearly 4-minute speech that he gave to jurors. Additionally today, defense attorneys for the Broadview 6 took the first step toward potential sanctions against the federal prosecutors they are accusing of misconduct. They filed a motion looking to recoup attorneys' fees and litigation expenses for the now former defendants. For more background on this story and its developments today, check out our website. A Chicago civil rights attorney is among those decrying a move by members of the Minnesota Republican Party to honor the man convicted of killing George Floyd 6 years ago. Delegates at the Minnesota Republican Party convention held a moment of silent prayer over the weekend for former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. He is serving more than 20 years in prison on both state and federal charges in Floyd's murder. A state representative presiding over that portion of the convention spoke with a local reporter about how the moment happened.
The delegates stood up and made a motion for a moment of silent prayer for Derek Chauvin. He came up and stood in front of the podium and asked if he could do it, and I recommended at that point that he not, but it's his right to be able to do that, as it is any other delegate at that convention, and so he did. And the motion was not out of order. It was seconded. I put it to the body voted, and we took a very short moment of silent prayer for Derek Chauvin.
In a statement, civil rights attorneys Ben Crump and Chicagoan Tony Romanucci, who represented the Floyd family, said, quote, the audacity of the Minnesota Republican Party to honor an individual who has both been convicted by a jury of his peers for the murder of a fellow human being, while at the same time violated a professional oath to protect and serve his community, is disgusting. It goes on to say, we call on Minnesota GOP leaders to issue an immediate retraction of this immoral act and issue an apology to the family of George Floyd and to the people of Minnesota that they serve. Up next, we meet the new leader of Chicago's Columbia College and hear about her vision for the school.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Now we're waiting to be joined by Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch, but first, Columbia College Chicago has a new president. Shantae Bolton is the first woman of color to lead the institution and the first woman to do so in nearly a century. She comes in at a difficult moment: a shrinking student body, a series of faculty layoffs, and a $40 million budget deficit. But Bolton remains optimistic about the future of the liberal arts school. And she joins us now to share her vision. Welcome, Shantae Bolton, president of Columbia College Chicago. Congrats on the new position.
Thank you. It's an exciting moment for the institution and for us in the city of Chicago.
I'm sure it is. Why did you want this role? What was it that interested you?
Well, really it is the mission that spoke to my heart. First off, we're an access institution, and so we focus on providing opportunity for students who would not otherwise have access to higher education. But even more so, the creative economy, which is a multi-trillion-dollar global business, and to have more representation and diversity in that space was very important to me. I am a person who really appreciates the arts and have been inspired by it, but also it has been a healing place for me, and many others find that in the arts as well. And so the mission resonated, and I wanted to be a part of doing something special, and in no greater city than the city of Chicago.
You're the first woman of color to hold this position. Do you think that that is significant, of course, considering that Columbia is a minority-serving institution?
Absolutely. That is a part of why I wanted to be in this role, is because of who I was serving. I think in leadership, it's important to know who the primary focus is, and as a student-centered president, it is very important that I support our students. Many of our students hail from the south and west side of Chicago, and many come from communities in which they're very proud of, but they have an opportunity at Columbia to explore their passions in the creative arts and to turn that into successful and sustainable careers. And they get to do all of that right here in the city in which they love, and can not only get their education, but can start their lives and careers and thrive successfully.
So last September, the U.S. Department of Education decided that it would no longer award discretionary grants to MSIs as well as Hispanic-serving institutions. Columbia is classified as both, but even, outside of this current presidential administration, Columbia College has been dealing with financial issues of its own for over a decade. How do you plan to reverse this trend or to stabilize the school?
Yeah. Well, periods of uncertainty oftentimes offer equally opportunities for those institutions who are willing to innovate and to lean into the moment. It allows Columbia College Chicago an opportunity for us to reimagine who we want to be. We've been in existence 135 years, anchored right here in the heart of the city of Chicago, and we're part of a very important economic development component with the creative economy here. And so I think it really presents us with an opportunity to think about how we best serve our students. Regardless of what happens in Washington, our mission remains the same. We are committed to providing access and opportunity to students of color, and regardless of that, who are interested in a creative arts education and creative careers. And so we're very committed to doubling down on that. We're looking at everything for how to respond to parents' desire to have recent and relevant education that leads to successful careers. But ultimately what our students care about is the opportunities that are available to them and how that leads to outcomes for a sustainable life and sustainable careers, and that's what we're doubling down on and focus.
And what does all that look like, when we're talking about the numbers, like if we're looking at the declining enrollment, which has gone from, what used to be around 12,000, a couple decades ago now to closer to 4,000. A series of faculty layoffs have had to happen over the last 18 months or so. What does that mean when you're talking about your fundraising and tuition?
Absolutely. We've been focused over the last year on four things. First and foremost, stabilizing enrollment. What we had to do, and we've been very intentional with rebuilding our relationship with Chicago Public Schools. That is a very critical relationship for us. And working with guidance counselors, meeting parents and students where they are, providing everything from financial education in terms of the affordability of college, and to make sure that they're aware of scholarships and other opportunities in addition to what the federal funds may provide. We've also been focused on elevating our brand, so we're pushing more visibility of the work that's produced through the creative storytellers and artists at Columbia. We recently held our Manifest, which is the largest art festival that happens. I'm calling it the unofficial kickoff to Chicago summer.
Little competition for Memorial Day.
Yes, but also we're looking at the financial sustainability. Certainly the challenges are not insignificant, but we're taking those on with very honest approach. We're being very transparent about it, and we're working in collaboration. We're tapping into the thing that our mission serves, and that's being creative with the problem solving. We're welcoming in our faculty, our alumni staff, and other community leaders to help us as we think about how to best serve the students, how to ensure that education maintains being affordable, and then how do we stabilize the institution so that we can ensure being a part of the Chicago community for another 135 years.
You know, speaking of, what do you want the future Columbia College campus to look like?
Well, I envision us being the premier creative arts education center in the heart of Chicago, being able to bring together both education, workforce development, and industry partnerships in a way that creates sustainable and fluid careers for creative professionals.
Okay, and you know, a little bit of time left. You know, you mentioned art being sort of healing for you yourself. What can you tell us about why art speaks to you?
I am the mother of a former micro preemie. He's 16 now, so he's super.
He's a big preemie.
Yeah, he's big now. But art was a form through music of how he went through his healing process. It also gave a form of expression to emotion and helped through the work with March of Dimes. I really love that organization. They were very pivotal to my experience. But it was both creation of art and helping him to learn how to do everything from physical mobility to music and how to express emotion. And so art has always sort of been a part of my story, and I find it to be such an honor to be in this moment and to lead Columbia College Chicago during this very pivotal time.
All right, that is a good place to leave it. New Columbia College President Shantae Bolton, congrats. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, one-on-one with Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch. He joins us right after this.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
It was well past 4 a.m. Monday morning when the Illinois General Assembly adjourned for the summer. By then, the budget had been balanced and a flurry of bills sent to the governor's desk. But a busy finish to the spring session left some of the biggest decisions, in some cases, the decision to wait until the very end. Here to share his perspective on the session is the representative who presided over it all, Speaker of the Illinois House, Chris Welch. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
So the Senate passed a new bill with incentives for the Bears, because we have to talk about the Bears, for the Bears Stadium. Sent it to the House sometime around 3:30 Monday morning. What were your first thoughts at 3:30 in the morning when that bill arrived at the House?
Well, certainly my first thought was we don't have time to consider that in the House. We have processes in place that we've been very consistent with since I become Speaker, and that involves getting a lot of stakeholder input. The biggest stakeholders to me are my members, and we caucus on things, we survey the caucus, we get a lot of input from our members, and we had no time to look at the bill, read the bill, let alone go into caucus and talk about it at 3:30 in the morning. And so we ran out of time.
Yeah. And by 3:30 in the morning, you all are technically past your midnight deadline.
Well, technically, but when you have a supermajority and you know that the votes are there for other things, you can continue working. And in this regard, it would have only needed 60 votes, but we didn't even have 60 votes. And that's the byproduct of people not having information. and you got to make sure they have the information and answers to their questions.
The Senate chose to speed up that new bill rather than risk losing the Bears to Indiana. The House chose the opposite. Why is that?
You know, our processes are very different. And as a leader of a chamber, I understand what the Senate president was going through. You have to listen to your members. You have to be responsive to your members. Our approach in the House was, in order to get someone to vote for something that impacts the Bears, it also has to impact other areas of the state. In order to get 60 people from across the state to vote on a bill in the House, it really needs to impact the entire state. And the bill that I've read that came over from the Senate so far does not do that. And it's just a different approach. And apparently our bill didn't stand a chance in the Senate. And so we're going to have to keep our conversations going over the summer here, and hopefully we can find something that works for the Bears.
Well, and to that, you know, the House first passed that mega projects bill back in April. Why did negotiations still end up coming down to the last minute?
Well, that's the legislative process. That's sausage making. In Springfield, people understand deadlines, and sometimes the deadlines are the reason why things actually get done. In this case, it's why it didn't get done. We ran out of time. But in the House, from our perspective, you really need to take your time to get it right rather than go fast and get it slow. And on complex issues like this, it's really important that you don't rush something. This is not easy by any chance. And you know, we passed a lot of things the other night that has been around for 2 years. Complex legislation takes time.
Are you planning, or is there any chance that you're planning to call a special session in the summer to discuss a stadium bill?
Yeah, you know, there's no plans to call a special session. We are back in November and then again in January for a lame duck session. What I think is really important is to keep the conversations going. People know that you're working earnestly. If we can reach an agreement between the House, the Senate, all of the stakeholders that are involved, you know, that's what's really important right now, is to keep doing the work. And we're committed to doing that.
Bears have said they plan to keep their own timeline. Do you have any concerns that that timeline, at the end of their timeline, they decide to go to Indiana?
Well, obviously, you know, I can't dictate what the Bears' timeline is. All I can do is commit to them that and show them by my actions that we're willing to continue to work. I left Springfield with meetings on my schedule that involve the Bears, and we're going to keep those meetings and have those conversations and do everything we can to get to that agreement.
Okay, so also the budget this year, $55.9 billion, so almost $56 billion. How did federal funding concerns play into this year's negotiations?
You know, it really made it the most complicated budget that I've had to work on in my 6 years as Speaker. And truly, the H.R. 1 bill that passed last summer, the big, bad, ugly bill, just had negative impacts on our budget all across silos. And so we had to figure out a way to pass a fiscally responsible budget that helped, you know, working class families across this state. And that was a difficult task to do this year. But we got it done. We've passed our 8th balanced budget since Governor Pritzker's been governor, 6th since I've been Speaker. And it really is a fiscally responsible budget that takes care of people.
The spending bill, though, again, not passed until those final hours of the legislative session, which in my experience has also been fairly typical. What were the sticking points this go round? Well,
if you look at the bill that passed the other night, we filed a budget bill the first week in May. The bill that passed the other night is probably 2% different, 3% different from what we filed. That entire budget has been out there for over a month. What it comes down to is I have to listen to my members who have things that's important to them that they got to go back home and explain. The Senate president has members coming to him with last minute things. That's part of the process. And literally, the budget that we pass, when we pass it, is very different from what was introduced in February, what was filed in May, and what ultimately passed.
What were the discussions like when deciding where to look for new sources of revenue?
Well, you know, one of the things is our progressive caucuses in both chambers were very insistent that those who can pay more should pay more, looking at corporations, looking at the rich. And I got to tell you, they had some wins in this budget cycle. You know, we closed some corporate loopholes. We decoupled from a couple loopholes. We passed taxes on social media platforms, digital ad tax, prediction markets, fantasy sports, cryptocurrency, all these new things that call for some taxation, and that's what helped us close the budget. Nothing on regular everyday people. We have not done that, and I think that was very important to the progressive caucuses in both chambers.
Will raising income tax on higher earners continue to be a priority in the future? You said that there were some wins for the progressives who were calling for that, but will there be more later?
I'll tell you, Brandis, taxing the rich is very important to me. Those who who can pay more should pay more. To those who much is given, much is required. And I fought very hard for a surcharge tax on millionaires to go on our November ballot. It came up just short in the House. The Senate President and I have agreed to keep talking this summer and find ways to come to an agreement on that language that we can probably look at in 2028. But honestly, we do need some structural reform, and those who can pay more should pay more.
House Republicans pointed to the scheduling of the House and Senate sessions as one of the reasons why they think many decisions were left until the last day. Here's House Republican leader Tony McCombie speaking on Sunday.
As you started the calendar year this year, you could tell right away by the difference of the calendar that the Senate and House Democrats were not communicating with one another, and you're still seeing that today.
Was there adequate collaboration between the House and the Senate during session?
I think we had excellent collaboration and coordination, as evidenced by yet another balanced budget, passage of massive cannabis hemp regulation, AI regulation, a junk fee ban act, things that have been in the works for over 2 years now. And that's because of the coordination of the chambers. Our chambers are very different. Mine is double the size of the Senate. The second year of a GA involves election year. There's a lot of needs of members to be back home in their districts. Our needs are different from the Senate needs. And so when sitting down to do the calendar, that had to come into play. The differences in the two chambers and the needs of members to be back home. And that's what people saw. But the false narrative that created was that there was no coordination. The substantive things that we got done shows that there was indeed a lot of coordination.
In the same vein, was there enough coordination or collaboration with members across the aisle, with the GOP?
I think we've gotten better every year since I've been Speaker. Leader McCombie said earlier on a radio show that she enjoyed the conversations with me, her budgeteers, with my budgeteers. There was a lot of coordination. Are we going to agree? We're going to disagree probably more than we agree because of the differences in the parties. But we can do better. We can always do better, and I'm committed to that.
Now, the evidence-based funding program for K-12 schools, it increased this year by $350 million, but the State Board of Education estimates it would take nearly 10 times that amount to bring all school districts up to 90% of their adequacy target. Should K-12 funding have been a higher priority this year?
If you look at the budget that we passed the other day, the single biggest thing that was prioritized was K-12 funding. We put in $350 million new dollars. Since I've been Speaker, we're close to $2 billion new dollars for K-12 education. Are we at the level we should be at? No, but that's going to take that new revenue stream that we need, and that's why I think we need the structural tax change. That's why I think a surcharge tax on millionaires will be very important. Those are dollars that can help us properly fund that evidence-based funding formula.
Are there any concerns that, this funding formula might fail if it is not implemented the way research says it should, which is, of course, with the funding adequate to educate students?
Well, the data shows it's working. It's been working since we passed it in 2017, and it's been fully implemented. It's working the way it was intended. It would probably work better and faster if we were able to fully fund it. But the problem is the budget has pressures all across silos, and there's only finite resources. If we can find additional resources, which we're committed to continuing to do that work on, we certainly will do that. And fully funding that evidence-based formula is extremely important to me.
The AI regulations passed this session, recognized as some of the strongest in the country, passed the House unanimously. At the same time, the tech companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, also supported these regulations. So I'm kind of wondering, if the AI companies are supportive, does that indicate that your legislation, your regulations could have been stiffer?
I got to tell you, you have to have those folks at the table. They're stakeholders. They know their industries, but they also know that they needed regulation. Our regulation is tougher than New York and California. They fought against some of the things that we put in our bill because it was tougher than New York and California. But we got it done. It was very important that we lead the way on that. And they knew it was going to happen, and so they decided to participate in the process rather than not participate in the process, and that was welcomed.
Okay, a few seconds left. Speaker, what are your priorities for the caucus moving into the summer?
Well, I got to tell you, number one, I want them in their districts, knocking on doors, letting the folks know what we did and why we did it. There's a lot of things that they can go home and brag about. This budget focused on affordability. We brought costs down in so many areas. We froze the gas tax. We have a school holiday on school supplies for the upcoming school season. We expanded the school lunch program. There's a lot of things that we had to do in response to what's going on in Washington. We created the first of its kind FRESH program to help those that Trump kicked off of the SNAP program. That's in this budget. There's a lot of things they need to go out there and have those town hall meetings and knock on doors and let the people know what actually went on.
All right, voters can expect to see their representatives out and about. House Speaker Chris Welch, Emmanuel Chris Welch, I can say your name. Thank you for joining us.
Brenda, it's my pleasure.
And on our program tomorrow evening, we'll hear from House Republican leader Tony McCombie. And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Blue Sky at WTTW. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that serves the needs of clients in the Chicago area and throughout the nation.